So I want to welcome everyone. Good afternoon. This is Ron Visconti with Phase 2 Careers, and we have a great panel starting and growing a consulting business. This is a collaborative venture with Renaissance Entrepreneurship Center. And if someone from Renaissance is here, I'll let them take the helm. But at the moment, I don't see anyone, either Crystal or Teresa. So I'll do a little plug for Renaissance. This is the location that we're doing projects for and programs for in East Palo Alto. Renaissance is all around the Bay. They're helping people start and grow small businesses. You could see their mission is to empower people to create businesses in all kinds of communities. They do a variety of workshops from Start Smart, Business Prep, which is getting your business idea formed. Lots of workshops on marketing strategies. They have an incubator when things are non-COVID, which hopefully will come back very soon. They do passion conferences and just a whole array of webinars now that we're in the pandemic. And basically, if you're interested, go to rencenter.org. And then briefly, I'm with Phase 2 Careers, and we're a nonprofit career resource for the over 40 professional. And we've been around since 2010. We have a lot of great programs coming up. For example, tomorrow, if you are looking for a part-time or a supplemental job, we have Managing Moves and More. They help seniors move their homes. And so they're kind of a service for that. If you're looking for assessment, I'm going to be meeting with people individually on Friday. And then next week, to your point, Christine, we have a job search panel review where we'll have some recruiters give feedback to you about your job search. And also next Thursday, we'll have Nancy Nelson's going to talk about creating income online by selling products. So that's who we are. So here's our presenters and panelists today. We have Corey Pelka, and I've left out a little of their career information because Corey's going to talk about herself. Diane Plouffe, and she'll chat about her business, and Christine Young, and I'm the moderator, Ron Visconti. Could we start with you, Corey, and just give a little background about, oops.
I would do, yeah. Thank you, Ron. And I'm so excited to be on this panel. A little bit of my background. I spent almost 30 years in the corporate world doing corporate communications and working with executives. So building and running executive communications teams, internal communication teams, running big events and things like that. And back in 2015, I had an empty nest. We'd been through 3 CEOs in 15 months. It was time for me to exit stage left with some passion and purpose. And so I took a package, volunteered to be laid off, and left. I didn't really have a great, I knew things I didn't want to do and things I did want to do, but I wasn't quite clear on what I wanted to do. But I did know that consulting would be my first step post corporate world, that I could take a lot of the skills that I had and move into consulting. And that is what I did. And we'll probably get into that a little bit more perhaps. But in my decision point of where I wanted to consult, I did some heavy thinking about what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. And I got very clear on those things that I did not want to do. I could if I needed to, but I had a whole list of things that I did not want to do. And from that, I got very clear on, here's the 3 or 4 areas that I will engage in consulting in the communication field. And from that, I did go into consulting, And then from there, what actually happened for me was I moved into an adjacent career. Through the networking and through the consulting that I did, I found that what I was actually doing more and more of was coaching. That all of my communication consulting gigs started with an element of coaching. And I had been told by a lot of the folks in my network and a lot of people around me repeatedly, it finally clicked with me that maybe I should look into coaching. And so I did. I went and I got certified with coaching, and that is now actually the majority of my business is now coaching. So part of my story is you can start with your consulting niche and the things that you know how to do, and then you can look for adjacent new areas, new skills, new things that may be of interest to you to kind of expand how you offer things. And so now for consulting engagements, I can offer coaching as well.
No, that your story is really relevant and really helps people realize it could lead to other things. So thank you for your story. And we're going to go into a big Q&A right after they do their little brief bio. Diane, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am Diane Ployce. My last name, Ployce, rhymes with choice, voice, or Rolls Royce. Just
I love that.
Put that out there. I somewhat ambled into consulting. I am what's called a franchise consultant. So I work with people who are looking at business ownership, specifically a franchise. I got into it because I started on the other side. I worked for a franchise company known as the franchisor. I liked that a great deal, had been doing that a few years, but unfortunately, the franchise company I worked with was good, but not that good in that they were having some financial problems. And even though I was part of senior management, I was the marketing director, I was laid off. Two of the men that I had worked with and were a little more proactive than me had started franchise consulting with a company called FranChoice. And they said, Diane, you would love it because you don't have to force a round peg into a square hole. We work with all kinds of franchise companies so you can match people based on their skills and their interests. And that sounded terrific. Because my friends had recommended it, I was also invited to join. That was 16 years ago, and I've been doing that ever since. Prior to that, I had been in radio advertising. I spent 10 years roughly in radio as a radio station sales manager. When I first got into it, I only took the job because a previous boss had told me that somewhere along the line, I would need sales experience. And I had worked for an ad agency and I was a media buyer. So I was offered a position and I thought, if I'm offered it, let's check it out. I might starve, but I'll get my experience and then I can move on to a real job. Well, it turned out that I liked it and it provided a very good background for me. I'm originally from Wisconsin. You might hear my almost Canadian accent. We moved to California 26 years ago for my husband's job. And my first job in franchising, I simply answered one ad in the newspaper, was offered the position, accepted it, and it has turned out to be very good. I do have an MBA. I am quite involved with Toastmasters, if anybody wants to talk about that on the side.
And thank you, Diane Ployce. I always get your last name mispronounced, and I apologize.
No worries.
Hear from your story just an openness, a serendipity, just being open to things, and that leads to other things. So I'm hearing lots of mini stories from just everyone's brief introduction. Christine, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Love to. I got into consulting without a plan, without a business plan, just because some of my friends listened to what I was doing and wanted me to hire to help their management teams become better interviewers. So to back up, I had been, I call it corporate jail. I have come from Sony, Hewlett Packard, Johnson and Johnson, and Intel are some of the companies you would recognize. And I've worked for plenty of smaller companies in between. And when I was with J&J, which was early in my career, J&J sent me to a behavioral interview training class, and I loved that. And so for the rest of my career, as I've hired about 5,000 people in my career, I really used behavioral interviewing. So when I would go out with my girlfriends, we would of course be talking about, what are you doing? What are you enjoying? How's the job going? Blah, blah, blah. And I would tell them about how excited I was. When I was at Sony, I trained the entire company, hundreds of people, actually it was close to 1,000 people, on how to do behavioral interviewing, as we totally revamped how we were doing our interview process. So I was excited about that, really excited, and that excitement spilled over to the conversation I was having with the contacts, whether they were in HR or not. This is how I got into consulting. Okay, so now I'm at HP hiring PhDs, and the market has dropped. If some of you remember, we had a gold rush in 1999. We had a very strong job market. And then I was a contractor at HP, and I lost my job. And I took another position, which helped me transition into career consulting. So I call myself the accidental consultant. And I formed the business with no planning and no forethought. And in fact, I would be embarrassed to tell you how little I charged my actual first company. And I wouldn't want to tell you what I charge now, but I can tell you it's a lot more than I charged back in the beginning. And we'll probably get into how you price yourself and some of the things to think about a little bit later. So I've been in business since 2005. I am actually 69 years old. So I don't want to work. I don't want to work 40 hours a week. In fact, if I work 5 or 10 hours a week now, I'm very happy to do that. And those two other women that you heard talking probably will agree with me that this is a wonderful place to be in, where you can choose the people that you work with. And there's things, as Corey told us, things that she was clear that she was good about and things she didn't want to do. And these days, there's no reason in a consulting gig to do things that you don't want to do. In fact, it's just not the best way for you to manage your business, right? You should have plenty of people you can refer out to. So I would just tell you right now, I love my life. I'm doing a little bit of human resources consulting, and then I'm doing a little bit of career coaching, and it's a very nice combination.
Well,
Thank you.
I've learned a lot from all three of your presentations, and from you, Christine. You're a perfect example. We want to know and learn from people that just jump in. What would you have done differently? But obviously, you were learning, always looking at how to navigate differently with the skill sets, like you mentioned, your behavioral interviewing sessions. So that's part of it, being more aware of where you want to go. So thank you, all three. I thought I'd start out with the poll question and just find out from the group that's present, do you have a consulting business? Yes or no? And if you want to put in the chat, if you're considering or you're getting close to launching, but.
This is amazing that we have so many people that are in business for themselves.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to end the poll and show. So we have, it's almost an even split, but 40% do have a consulting business and 60% do not. Any comments from the panel? Any thoughts? And Jerry mentions yes, but not formalize. And Gregory is en route to having a consulting. Any thoughts about that?
You mean, Ron, the difference between the percentage or?
Well, just for people that are in consulting, there's some things people have to think differently if they're in or they're not in. So the people that are currently in the business, well, just any thoughts that you have about that?
Right off the top, I would say for those of you that have your consulting business, this is wonderful that you realize there's plenty of things to learn. So congratulations for coming.
So, yeah. And how about you, Corey or Diane?
I'd say kudos for taking the first step and starting a business. You don't know until you try. So good for you.
It's kind of like the Donald Rumsfeld. You don't know the question. You don't know what you don't know, right? And how about you, Corey?
Yeah, I would actually say I'm finding this is a good time to start. That as we come out of the pandemic, I'm seeing a lot of companies are looking at their operating models, their business models, their hiring models in a different way. And I think there might be some real opportunity where bringing in consultants or something like that might actually be good for them. So I think this is a good time.
And so we're getting reactions. So Keith is starting to launch his consulting business, helping businesses and companies recover from the pandemic. So, I thought this would be a great way to just open up to the Q&A. But before we do that, is there any burning little tidbits that you want to give Diane to kick things off?
I think many times people get into consulting because they can do it individually. They know their skills, they know their passion, they know their work ethic, they've got some contacts, they can leverage that. It's an easy transition. Would be interested to learn what people have done with that, if they've taken it and created a firm with it or brought in any other people, but it certainly seems a easy first step out of that corporate jail.
Okay, so we're using the word corporate jail today. That's the comment. Thank you for that.
We've embraced it.
How about you, Corey? Any beginning tips to get things started here?
I would like to kind of pick up a little bit on what Christine had mentioned. Is one of the real beauties of consulting is being in control of your time and the pace of your life. And so to me, that was one of the real attractions to leaving the corporate world and the one job for 60 hours a week. Consulting gives you some breathing room. And to be able to look at it from that framework, I think allows you to build in time to explore other things that may be of interest to you as well. So I would just encourage.
That sounds right there. That's invigorating right there, that you're always being open and always refreshed by things. So that's positive. How about you, Christine? And we're getting comments already.
Yeah, I think that they both have covered what I was thinking. Go ahead. We can go on to the next one.
Well, here's a comment from Larry, and I want to and maybe go to you first, Christine. Larry says individually okay, but having a partner can be a great advantage. Do you want to address that whole idea of consulting with partners?
Yeah, I actually am in partnership with my husband. And as when we work in partnership to do a package of a resume, and I love the whole development of the LinkedIn profile. So Bob is the communications guy, he's the marketing guy, he's the messaging guy, he's the differentiation guy. That's the part he likes. And since I do other things besides career coaching, we've actually made a really nice partnership, but boy, we did stumble at the beginning because it was First of all, we're home together the whole day, right?
Mhm.
And we actually really needed to have meetings on a regular basis. Here's the client load. Of these 10 people, Bob, where are you with these people? And when do you think you're going to be ready to turn them over to me? So I have a partner complicated by the fact that this person is my husband, right?
Wow.
And yeah, and then I have, I would say, other people that I refer out to a lot, right? Because that there's some things I just don't like to do. If I'm doing, like, I wouldn't want to write an affirmative action plan anymore. Did that, kind of boring, you know. I want to go on to something else. So in a true partnership, Ron, that would be what I would tell you is Bob and I hit some bumps, and we worked through them. And now I have so much admiration for him as like a coworker, right? I've seen this side of my husband that I would never see unless we were in business together.
So you bring up a lot of meaty topics of doing this with a significant other. So that's a topic in itself. But thank you for that, Christine. Corey, what's your response to Larry about individual versus having a partner, either formal or informal?
Well, I personally don't have a partner. It's me, but I feel like the networking, this is where it really networking goes both ways, right? For me to be able to refer people always brings business back to me. And so it's that concept of partnering and understanding, like Christine was saying, I'm not going to do this set of things, but man, I've got 2 or 3 people I can refer you to over here. And in return, they can refer back to my strengths. And so I would open the partner concept a little bit to that, and really make sure that the people that you're working with aren't just vague, but they're really the people that you respect and admire.
So it sounds like you're doing a lot of vetting, and these are people you really trust. And this is
Yeah, they represent you, right? I mean, if I refer someone to, it's like, go work with this person over here, my brand and reputation is on, is in the fire there as well. So yeah.
Any comments about that, Diane, about going it individually or with a partner, formally or informally?
I do. Thank you for asking. Whenever I work with people looking at a franchise, sometimes they say, well, maybe I should partner with someone. Usually it's because they're afraid of the investment or they're just plain afraid. So I recommend that if they're going to partner with someone, make sure they partner with someone with complementary skills, not similar skills. So if one person likes to do the operations, don't find a partner that also likes to do the operations, because you're going to arm wrestle who's going to do that. And then no one's going to do the sales and marketing, or no one's going to do the accounting. So make sure that whoever you join forces with, that your skills are complementary and you can pretty easily define who's going to do what. Also, think of it like a marriage. You're going to be spending a lot of time with that person. You have to like and appreciate their values, their ethics, their strategy, so that it's harmonious.
Those are, you gave lots of little tips to think about of complementary skills, and just some really good advice. Jerry has a comment that embraces the term corporate jail, laugh out loud, reject the corporate jail itself. Is that what drives people to consulting? Just not wanting that, that corporate life? Does anyone want to handle that?
I think you could take some of the good parts of corporate. Probably what people like about corporate is dealing with some of the other corporate execs that are probably smart and very business savvy, great business acumen. They probably like crafting the deals and doing some of those things, being in control. So as a consultant, they could keep the control, but they would have a lot more freedom over what they're doing and at their time schedule, rather than being forced to hit certain time schedules.
Christine or Corey, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I'll go first if that's okay. What I liked about choosing to be a consultant was that choice, was I get to choose the things that I'm good at, right? And the things that I enjoy. Usually, hopefully those two things go hand in hand. The things you like to do, you're also then very good at because you are passionate about it. And so that gave me that sense of control. And yeah, it was sort of cherry picking my corporate world experience and just cherry picking those things that I liked doing and bringing those forward. And by doing that, I have to say what happens then is people know you for doing those things. And one of the things I would recommend as you look to decide what you want to do is go ask people what they would recommend you for.
Good question.
And actually stay and listen and accept what they tell you, because sometimes we want to just say, oh, no, I'm not good at that. Listen to what they have, because they're the ones that are going to say, that's how I got a lot of my first gigs, was someone said, oh, if you need that, you need to talk to Corey because she's good at that thing. And that was their perception of me. So not just what you like to do, but finding out from those you trust around you that might be your network that would refer you. Find out how they would recommend you and for what.
Good, very good tip. And get some feedback from people. How about you, Christine?
Yeah, building upon what the two others of you have said, that I think the corporate world is so different from the consulting world, because in the corporate world, you're really not taking any risk at all. And when you're in business for yourself, you're assuming all the risk. Okay. And the risk is, risk in terms of what's the kind of consulting you deliver and whether you need insurance for that. And then the other risk is, just because you are good at one slice of the pie, the real key difference between being good at what we do in the corporate world is in your own business, you are 40% of your time needs to be on sales and marketing, right? So you're really wearing three hats in your being your own boss. You are delivering the service of which you are good at. That's 40% of the time. 40% of the time is sales and marketing to fill the pipeline. And 20% of the time is, I call it administrative. And so you really have to be comfortable with that sales and marketing piece. And that's where a lot of us who take this expertise that we have and want to open up our own business, well, after the first couple of gigs, okay, now what do we do? And how do we fill that pipeline?
Good points. And it reminds me of a good book that talks about the three strategies called E-Myth by Michael Gerber, which is a very good book. But thank you all for that. This is a question from Keith. Can anyone recommend a corporate consulting, coaching, networking group? Does anyone want to handle that? Corporate consulting or coaching networking group?
Well, there is one. I get an email from them every week. I'll look at my email now. And so I won't be looking in the camera, so I can give you the name of that group. Anyone remember what that is?
There's one group called Provisors. You might check that out.
Okay.
And how about you, Corey? Any recommendations?
No, I have looked at and seen Provisors, and so I think that would be a good one as well.
Okay, well, thank you for that. This is from Gregory on partnering, distinct from partnerships. Can anyone speak to experiencing, pursuing, and working on efforts together with colleagues in a complementary areas? How do you present yourselves? What are some tips and tricks to work seamlessly together? And are there any helpful tips on structural fiscal aspects? So that's a good question with lots of sub-questions to it.
I'm going to think about that for a while if someone else wants to start.
Well, since Corey, you were the designated difficult person to handle.
Yeah. So the first part of the question was how to work with people who are complementary. Is that
Yeah, it
right?
says, can anyone experiencing, pursuing, and working efforts together with colleagues in complementary areas? How do you present yourselves to them? What are some tips and working arrangements? And any tips about fiscal? How to arrange a financial agreement?
Yeah. So I won't answer about the fiscal because I haven't really had a lot of experience in that, but I would say for the working with complementary folks, this is where sitting down and having what I call designing your alliance conversations, so that you sit down and you're just completely transparent with each other that here's really what I want to do, here's really what you want to do. Is there an intersection? Is there not? This is where, and it's a really good place to start because you have to start from the place of trust. And so that's where I would say start from that place of being completely transparent with each other, and then design sort of the rules of engagement of how you're going to complement each other. And to Diane's point, it's like, if you like the marketing, that's great. Go do that, and I'll do the operations side. And then this is where we'll meet in the center.
Corey, I'm almost hearing like it's premarital counseling.
That was
Yeah, right.
There's actually, I'm also a coach, right? And so there is a piece of this, like you might actually look at getting like a business coach or a coach that can help with designing the relationships for you to understand what the rules of engagement are.
No, I like that. How about you, Diane? Anything about complementary, colleagues that you work with in complementary areas? How do you present yourself in the fiscal aspect of it?
In addition to what Corey said, and she gave wonderful info, is to have well-defined goals. Where are you going? How are you going to get there? And then frequent checkpoints so that the communication is flowing and that you're delivering what you want to do in the time frame that you want. So you've got all of those components that you're checking in. We know you can't check in enough. We tend to assume, and whenever we assume, we usually get into trouble.
Okay, all very very practical tips. This is from Anna, and I think you referred to it early on, Christine, about hourly rate, that when you first got started, you weren't getting quite what you wanted. She's struggling with about setting her hourly rate, and to complicate it, she's moved from Houston, hearing from friends that I have to up my game to be in the Bay Area price. So do you want to address the topic of what you set? And Houston and the Bay Area are two different markets.
Well, I would say, and Ron, you wanted me to talk on this?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought is you shouldn't have an hourly rate. You should bid on the project, right? That meets more of the IRS guidelines. So I don't know what kind of consulting you do, but if you're really charging on an hourly basis, it's not the best way to do things.
Okay. How about you, Corey?
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts on this. When I first went from corporate into a consultant or contractor kind of arrangement, I kind of had to sit down with myself and think, is there a little bit of a cost that I'm willing to give up to not have to market myself? And so there were some contracts I took that were, like a 6-month gig or, 20 hours a week. And it was an hourly rate. And I actually found for some of them, that was great because I actually made more money rather than just a bid. So I think it really depends on the type of work, what the company policies are that you're looking to move into. Are you willing to give up just a little bit in costs so that you don't have to be out marketing? You know, is this your first consulting gig and you need to get some testimonials behind you? There's a lot there to think about. But for me personally, I was almost immediately hired by 2 companies. You know, sort of as a contractor, it was hourly, it was consulting. And then I got paid for every hour I worked. And there was actually some freedom there because in the corporate world, it's not like that. So I'll just offer that a little bit there as well.
Diane, your thoughts about the hourly rate and also from coming from a different geography?
Well, I probably don't have a lot to add in this regard in that my services are free. So I do no billing or invoicing myself. We are paid by the franchise companies for the pre-screening and education that we do. So I'm not certain that would be that applicable to this audience. Regarding geography, for example, I do work nationally, and I believe that more and more people, especially now that we've had a year of virtual meetings with Zoom, a lot of things have opened up. So previously, someone may have had a market in Silicon Valley or San Francisco or even the Greater Bay Area, and now they may have clients in Los Angeles or clients in Miami, and would be a perfect fit or a perfect match for them. So I think that's a very positive.
Well, thank you all for that. This is from Jerry. He wants to create without limitations of control of corporate execs and maximizing short-term shareholder value. Any comments to that?
Ron, say the question again.
It's more of a comment that he wants to create without the limitations of the control of corporate execs and maximizing short-term shareholder value.
I can't answer that. Maybe one of my
Well,
colleagues.
yeah, I'm going to comment on that a little bit, perhaps, and I'm probably a little jaded. That means you can't be in a public company, or it's going to be much harder in a public company. However, I would also say the clients I work with that are, you know, pre-IPO or privately held, they have the same kinds of pressures. It's just private boards that they have. So to me, it's more of a culture question, being able to kind of interview the company you want to go work for around their culture, because they're all going to be driven to some degree or other to make a profit. It's just what your question is indicating is that number 1, 2, and 3 and how they operate, or is there something more more around value creation that's more important? I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Do you have a comment about that, Diane?
I think I will pass on that question. Thank you.
Okay, and this is a comment from Gregory about corporate jail. Boy, that got a response, Christine. I see it less about rejecting corporate life for me than being able to pick and choose which positive aspects of corporate life I get to interact with. So that's a positive thing.
Yeah.
This is from Keith. Thank you for the provisor's suggestion. Looking at their website, nationwide and 6,000 members is more that I'm looking for. If you have a local branch, well, would they have a local branch of provisors? Is there a subset of that?
Well, there are a number of different local groups.
And if you have any, you could just put it in the chat room and we could make that available. This is from Nihei. How do you access to corporate consulting work? We find jobs on job sites, but what about the contracting work? Is there a site that we can see the list? Anyone want to suggest this? There's numerous.
Yeah, I would, if you are willing to work a W-2, right, through like 3 of the largest temp agencies, right? Adecco, Manpower, and Kelly. Those are 3 companies that have global contracts with a lot of global companies. For instance, HP works with Manpower. I don't know if they still do it. One time they had a very long relationship with Manpower. So if you be open to working W-2, which is still working and a legitimate business way to do it, it can really get your foot in the door about showing them what you can do.
Any,
And I'd like to also say there are also, like I was in marketing and communications, and certainly in the Bay Area, there are marketing and communications agencies that quite often, to get your foot in the door, going through that agency where they carry the insurance and all the paperwork and all the back, they do all the admin stuff, and they contract with the company you're working for. That's a way to get your foot in the door. And again, you're going to give up, you know, a little bit in pay for that ease, but it's also a way to begin to build your resume and your experience working in this new way.
Yeah, and it lowers your risk too, which is nice.
so that's
Yeah.
kind of an entry-level starter for consulting, right?
Yeah. But what's great about it too is that, you know, you're through a reputable company, you're then doing the work that you like to do, and you're building your brand in this new way, right? And so it is a way to ease yourself in. And again, I think this is, you know, what's your 3 to 5 year plan? Not just, you know, do I need to start right away with this big business thing? There's ways to ease into this to see if it's even what you like and how much you actually want to do it.
Could I ask a follow-up question to that? If you do get an assignment, isn't part of the possibility of that being slotted, you know, that a company only sees you in a particular light doing a specialty? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. That could be a problem. Yeah.
I would say that's a yes and opportunity, right? Yeah, it gets your foot in the door. And it gives you the opportunity to, you know, engage with the folks at a level that lets them know what else you can do. Because there's always more you can do once you get in there.
I see. How about any response to that, Diane?
I think there were some good comments. The only additional point I'd like to make is that someone getting started may want to contact some of the nonprofits or some of the organizations that host events. They're always looking for people to assist. It would probably help make some contacts, add to that resume, and hopefully something that you would, again, enjoy just to get started.
Well, good point. That's a good strategy. This is from Gregory. How do you regulate the line between client project development and giving away the shop work guidance strategy that should really be under the contract? So that raises a question, and some of you mentioned about the hourly. Isn't that part of having a package deal, that all of this is under the package deal? Does that make sense? So I think the question, Greg's answer is, you know, some parts of the project might be given away, essentially, correct? He's talking about the work guidance strategy that really should be under the contract and between the client project development. Any comment?
Yeah, I don't know if I missed the beginning. Are we allowed to speak during this? But this is Gregory.
Sure. Yeah, why don't
To
you ask
clarify?
the question directly?
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. So yeah, like if you were in a space where some of the solutions that you're providing are actually what you would be providing as a consultant are actually directions that a client can take, more strategic advice. A lot of times during the initial conversations, those things come up, you know, before you're in contract. And I'm just wondering, I mean, if you're doing contractual work that's assignment based, it might be different, but when you're doing, so I guess this might work more for the coaching individual, but I'm just wondering, how do you where do you cut it off?
Yeah. So
And
that's-
how?
Yeah, no, I hear you, and I understand. What I'm hearing and interpreting that question as is, how do I scope my bid for this project without giving them the solutions ahead of time, right? They need you to come in, and I think that's part of this is art and science, is how you conduct the interview with the client potentially to find out what the scope is that they're looking for, and to keep your then your scope of work document clear enough that this is what you're going to provide. And so if part of what you're providing is, to develop a strategy to execute on this initiative, then that's the level you keep it at. You don't give them all the details, because that's your special sauce. That's what you come in and do.
Right.
And so part of that is then being very clear with yourself on how long you really think it's going to take. Because I'm going to tell you, I thought I was being realistic. It always took me longer than I thought. And that's part of because I was a perfectionist, or I didn't really know what I was doing. So you're going to learn along the way on how to scope projects accurately. And so there's the scope, and then there's the deliverables part of the bid, and being clear on what you're going to deliver is going to help. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah,
That does. That's quite helpful. Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone-
Corey, I just would agree with you. Boy, this is just something I don't think you really have to learn by the seat of your pants by talking to other people. There's classes for how to bid projects, and you just get better as you go along, right?
So any comments, Diane?
Just one thing to add, and we hear the term scope creep.
Yes.
And that's something you definitely want to be aware of, that you're talking with someone and they say, well, oh, that's such a great idea. Thanks for bringing that up. Can we work that in? And careful of your ego of just saying, sure, I can do that. So watch out for scope creep.
I
It
like
happens.
that. We're hearing lots of new terms here today, scope creep and corporate jail. Now, this is from Larry. How do you best work with an organization where you're doing consulting work, but also be doing some volunteer work? I'm thinking this could be common in nonprofits and NGOs. This is so doing a project, volunteer project for a nonprofit. Is it wise to also be pitching them on a profit-making project, or how do you make that switch over? Has anyone had experience working on that? Because if you're presenting yourself, you're doing volunteer work, and then you're also asking for consulting work. Is that an advisable course of action? I'm going to go to you, Corey. You're the
I get all the hard questions. Here's my thought, because I actually, when I first left the corporate world, I went around like Goldilocks, and I volunteered at a bunch of places because I was just so happy to be set free. And what's great about volunteering is you could say yes or no. Like if it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't work, it's like I can say, great, I'm not going to come back. That's all good. So volunteering, I think, is a wonderful exploration area. And you also can find new tribes, new people to work with. I think it's possible through volunteering to get into a contract situation or consulting. But again, this is being very clear on what the separation is. You would have to be very articulate and very clear on the difference. And so if you're volunteering at hosting and running events, but you want to consult on their strategic business plan, then that's pretty separate. But if there's a crossover, I'm not quite sure. You'd have to just be really clear on your communication with folks, I think.
So do you want to handle that, Christine or Diane?
I have to
Thing
just,
that I would,
go
I
ahead,
would
Diane.
comment on somewhat dovetails with what Corey said, is that there may be something such as an annual plan that would be separate from your volunteer work, that they might say, you know us and you know our organization, you've got the skills, we need some help and we're willing to pay for it. So that would be separate and would be the foot in the door to get that. Or if they're having some big event, maybe it's their 20th anniversary, again, a one-time event that again would be clear that you could be contracted for. So I would keep the lines pretty distinct.
How about you, Christine? Any thoughts?
No,
Okay. Um, so boundaries seem to be a real issue that people are coming up with. What are some things that we haven't thought of so far? Well, negotiation. Christine, you mentioned early on that you had some work and discussions around negotiation. You want to talk about that?
yeah, I'd love to. Well, part of negotiation, first of all, is pricing yourself. And I talked about how every person who's come to me and said, hey, Christine, can you talk a little bit about your HR consulting business? I would, of course, talk with them about how they are pricing how they are pricing themselves. And then almost exclusively, they were not charging enough, right? So you have to charge enough so that the time that you're doing sales and marketing, which is 40% of your week, so you can fund that. So every client that you have is getting, every new client you have, you charge more. Important, for instance, to know that a larger company won't blink twice about a charge that I would make. In fact, when I knew that they didn't even come back, I thought, well, that just proves to me I'm still not charging enough, right? So I did a lot of talking with people about that. Now, Ron, the point I was making earlier is I was teaching a bunch of job seekers this morning how to negotiate. And the point I was making about, I didn't talk about the difference between women and men in negotiation, but generally it's a known fact that women negotiate very differently and do not do it sometimes as well as men. My primary client that I'm dealing with is a head of human resources who is almost always a woman. And only one time in 15 years of business, one time, someone came back to me and she said to me, you know, Christine, I'm not sure why I would pay you $1,500 for sexual harassment training. The going price for 2-hour training is $500. And I was shocked. Now, it's true. A lot of HR consultants do charge only $500 for sexual harassment training. But, you know, sometimes people say to me, well, Christine, how much do you charge? And I say, as much as I can get, right? Because the perception is that the more people charge, there is greater value in that. And I think there is some truth to that. But what I do is I explained to the person what I am going to be doing extra for her that other consultants wouldn't be doing. Let me tell you what you get for $500. And let me tell you why I bid for you $1,500 for this training, right? And I don't even have to prepare for the training. All my slides are done. All I have to do is go in and Control F and change the company name, right? And so for me, it's part of my bread and butter class that I do. So that would be, Ron, a little bit more about what I was thinking this morning.
Great. Any thoughts about that, Corey, about negotiation? And Christine brought up value added is key, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the the things to get comfortable with is to be able to just say, because there have been clients where they're like, yeah, I'm not going to pay, isn't that high or isn't that too, and it's like, this is my rate. Like just being able to own the fact that I can say, this is my rate. This is what I bring. This is the value and this is my history.
Mhm.
If it's not going to work, then that's fine. If they're going to nickel and dime you to death, you don't want to be working with them anyway. That's a terrible situation to be in. So I think some of this starts with owning what it is you decide to charge and knowing that you're worth it. And I actually have found that's the hardest part of this, is to own what you're worth and then be able to declare it to other people. However, once you start, right, once you get 1 or 2 gigs at that rate, then it's like, and part of what Christine was like, oh, well, that's just her going rate. Because now I have other people referring me and they tell them what my rate is, or they'll tell them, it's in this range. Then you can keep upping it. So start with really, I think, beginning to own that you're worth this.
So being comfortable with your fee structure.
You have to be, I think you have to, I have said no to folks. If I thought that they were going to nickel and dime me to death, that is not what I'm in this for. This is not the environment I want to be in.
Mhm. But
They're not.
yeah, but how, Corey, how many times has that happened? I think that's pretty.
No, I would say like once or twice, like it's, and then,
Yeah.
and it was like, and I knew almost immediately, it's just like, oh, okay, I'm not even going to take this gig. Right.
Yeah.
I didn't even get involved in it. So
Yeah, well, because it comes down to trust. They're almost saying to you, I don't trust you. And
Hmm.
so it's so different, the experience, like I said, one time in 15 years. Although I would say on the other side of my business, so when you work in the corporate world, they're just used to spending a bigger amount of money. Now, if someone's hiring me to do a resume LinkedIn package, okay, I charge a whole lot more than most people, but I have to get really clear on what differentiates my package and why I'm doing that. So I think that really what makes us good, because Corey, of course, in communication, it's getting clear on what your message is, right?
Any final thoughts on this, Diane?
Yes, one thing to add, and this is courtesy of a man by the name of Mark LeBlanc, who is a past National Speaker Association president, and he's written, I believe, half a dozen books or so. When he talks about negotiation, he said that you can talk to your clients about, I have good news and I have hard news for you.
Oh,
The good news is that business is going very well. The hard news is that my rates have to go up. So I have good news and I have hard news for you. And most of the people recognize that, and they've had results, and the deliverables have been on target, and they recognize and see that's part of it, and they accept the hard news.
I like that verbiage. That's very good. So we're getting some very priceless verbiage here today. I heard one of you mention a little bit earlier about referrals. Do any of you want to tackle that? Is that a viable way to have a lot of your business grow through referrals? If so, who wants to tackle that on, or him?
I'll go first. I think I mentioned it in my little intro. Most of my business is referral. And it's actually referrals from people I didn't think of. So part of this is when I decided I wanted to consult, I went out to the folks in my network that I wanted to work with again. The people I liked, the people I did good work with, the people I respected. And I knew most likely, depending on where they were, they weren't going to be, I wouldn't get a gig from them, but my brand with them, my having worked with them, my reputation with them would trickle out. And that's how I got my first couple gigs, was someone in that network referred me to someone else. And then it continues after that. And so I feel like it's really important, again, to be clear on what it is you bring, what are the things you want to do, what do you want them telling you with your messaging, what are the 3 things Corey does? Oh, good. If I hear someone that needs that, I'm going to refer them to Corey. And so they're your messenger for you. And I have found that to be really the most impactful way to get clients, because then I also know there's a little bit of trust that they're coming from a source that I trust as well. So the referral company has a better chance of being aligned to my values and my work ethics.
Okay, a lot of good tips. Diane, do you want to handle this? And then you, Christine, about referrals.
Likewise, the majority of my business is also referrals. It could be from career coaches. It could be from other strategic referral partners. Many times it's from people that I've worked with, that I've placed into business that have been successful, or someone opens a business and they say, how did you ever find that business? I would have never thought of that. And they make an introduction. So it's been very helpful and advantageous. And over the years, it has just grown. And that's part of how I can continue to keep my practice free, is because people continue to refer to me.
Well, thank you for that. How about you, Christine?
I'm going to address a different tact. When you said referrals, I was thinking about, how do you reward people that give you the business, right? So I have done that with one friend who I almost call her my saleswoman, right? She has just found me some great gigs. She really talks me up with clients. And so what she does as her consulting business is she goes in and she does training. She is an on-site HR manager. And she would bring me in to do sexual harassment training or interview skills training for managers or any kind of soft skills stuff. So I have rewarded her with a monetary bonus for that, right? I have another friend who also, Marcia, had a similar business where she was also a trainer similar to me. And what she did is she wrote to this huge network she had, because she managed this group called HR Women, and she had about 2,000 members of this group. And what she did is she said, I will guarantee you will get 10% of the fee that I get. And so that's how she managed that. So just kind of a different view on the referrals piece.
No, that's great. Anyone that has any questions, we welcome as we wind down. But I wanted to come back to you again, Christine. You mentioned that 40% of your time is marketing and sales. Outside of networking for referrals, what are some other things you do to market your services?
Yeah, I have looked into getting a marketing service. And, my husband is a marketing communications guy, so he understands a lot about that. He wrote a lot of the words for the website. I was so proud that I actually designed the website using the Website Tonight tool. So I was really proud of myself. Hey, that is a downside of being in business for yourself. You've also got to be your own IT person. And that's like the thing I hate more than anything. Oh my gosh, the computer's jammed. This doesn't work. It's like, that's the wonderful thing. One of the many wonderful things about being in corporate jail, right? All that stuff is taken care of for you. So Ron, I got a little off track there and I forgot the question.
Well, that's a lot of interesting stuff. You mentioned part of your week has to be about 40% with marketing. And
Yes.
besides networking with people that know you, what are some other things you do to?
Yeah, that's what I do. So what I do is I speak, I do public speaking as much as I can. I'm really not, I don't do a lot of selling when I do that. Other consultants do a much better job. Other consultants will give away, for instance, Corey might give away 1 hour free coaching session on a subject of their choice. I've had other career coaches who give away a free resume, a rewrite, or something like that. I've actually never done that, right? I just do public speaking, and I find sometimes it's 4 or 5 years later, and someone will contact me and they'll say, well, so-and-so referred me. He heard you speak at, and then it's something I've done 5 years ago, and they've kept my business card that whole time. I'm just amazed. But for me, it's just all about having coffee with people, having lunch, asking what's going on with them, and almost consistently, for that investment, which I don't really consider marketing, I consider it friend working, right? I'm just getting together with people that I like. I don't have to get together with people I don't like because they're not going to refer me anyway. So I think it's for someone who is an extrovert, I feel very comfortable meeting people. I don't have any social hesitation. I just have always had, I've always liked to get together with many different people over coffee and just to talk and find out what's going on with their lives. And I just get business out of that. I think the other thing also, I was very well known because I spent 18 years volunteering for the local and international HR group. So a lot of people knew my name.
So doing things that you would naturally do and just exploring with people and doing, some of the groups that you're aligned with. Diane, what are some of your thoughts about, you mentioned that, referrals is a big part of your world, but what are some other ways that you get the word out about your consulting business?
I do the typical monthly newsletter. I try to make it interesting, but it's still a newsletter, and I recognize that some people want to unsubscribe. That is perfectly fine. I do a fair amount of marketing on LinkedIn. That's where a lot of my audience lives, because many times people are in career transition and they're considering a dual path. They're looking at a job and they know what that looks like, but they don't know what a business looks like, and that's where I can help them. So I write a fair amount of articles on LinkedIn. I do some videos. I've spent some time with my profile. And what I should do more is reach out to some of my contacts. I shouldn't say probably, I know I have a gold mine in my contacts that I do need to mine more, but it's more of a strategy of I'm putting out info. And when the people have a need where they're in their market, they usually raise their hand and say, can we talk? I've got some questions. I don't know about this. I'd like to learn a little bit more, hopefully develop a trust and a relationship begins.
Great. And how about you, Corey?
Yeah, well, I think like the other ones, I have a website. I've been blogging since I left the corporate world. So my website is Third Act Gypsy. That was who I have branded myself as, having left in my third act. And so, I think my website is probably my main if I'm going to be marketing anything. I do have a monthly email that I send out to my subscriber list, but I'm at the stage where I don't market as much because my plate is fairly full. And so I think I have learned the balance of trying to, what's the right amount of marketing for the right amount of work and the life balance that I'm looking for at this stage in my life. And so I think that's it. I think my main thing, because I am more of a writer, is focusing on the writing and getting the word out in that way for me. And that creates connection. And similar to what Christine was saying, is like, you know, the connections that were established maybe 3 or 4 years ago, they have come forward.
Mhm.
And so you never know when they're going to come around in the future.
Well, thank you for that, the whole panel. As we're winding down here, I want to know from all of you, is there something we haven't discussed that we should discuss? Diane, is there something, a question or a thought that you have that we haven't talked about?
The thing that comes to mind that we haven't talked about yet would be you may want to find a mentor or a role model, someone who is doing it well, maybe someone that is in their sunset and has time to give and is willing to share some of those tips and secrets, would be someone you'd want to have in your court as you form an advisory board.
Okay, how about you, Corey?
You know, I really like, you know, the concept that I've talked about of like expanding your view and really being open to those adjacent or ancillary skill sets or industries or things that you can offer, because you may need to go get, you know, skilled or certified in something that's of interest to you, but it's going to open up a whole new path that you hadn't quite thought about. So I think that's mainly, I just want to leave that open there for you, is to say, here are the things I'd like to do. I can consult in this area, and I'm going to remain open to a lot of other possibilities as well.
Great advice. How about you, Christine?
Oh, we didn't talk about what happens when you don't get paid.
Yeah.
And so for the 2 parts of my business, there's no issue with the corporate world. They may make you wait longer than you want to, but I have always been paid. And where I have stumbled and learned the hard way is when I'm dealing directly with individuals in career coaching. And so when I started off, I billed people later. And I have, let's see, 2 people that I really had to run after. And one of them, I never received the $500. I was able to write that off in my taxes some way. I don't remember what my tax person did. The other person I did eventually get paid for. It was about $500. And then I learned to ask for money beforehand. And I have never had another problem. And when I do career coaching and I tell people this is the rate, or this is how much it's going to be for a package, then and we can get started as soon as I receive payment from you, right? So I will do half payment if it's a larger contract, but generally, if I'm doing more of my bread or butter and packages of the resume and LinkedIn profile, then I always ask for that money up front. And so now it's so easy. You can do PayPal, Venmo, you know, all that stuff.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's a very practical advice, and it's real. And
Yeah.
I think all of us, at least at some time, something not so positive has occurred. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
This is a good wind down question. Larry asked the question, the future of consulting. Does anyone want to handle that? Is that too large of a scope?
What was the question? Future consulting?
What's the future of consulting?
Oh, the future of consulting. Well, let me start off. The Society for Human Resources Management, we call it the contingent workforce. So in corporations, we have regular full-time employees. Those are employees, they get a benefits package. Now, in order for companies to ebb and flow according to the business cycle, we have to have additional people that are part of our flexible workforce. So those people are temps, if you're hourly employees, they're contractors, and they are true consultants as defined by the IRS, or there's a corp to corp kind of arrangement like you would have with Manpower. So I would say, so what the Society for Human Resources Management says of every 4 people working at your company, 1 of those should not be an employee. So you have 3 employees and you have 1 person who is part of the contingent workforce. So that could be someone from Manpower or Kelly, that could be a consultant, et cetera. Right now in the United States, we're running at 22%. So companies, I think, are definitely working toward what we see in Europe, which is a higher level of that. And with ProMatchers, Ron, I don't know how much you know about the ProMatch group, but this is a group of people in Sunnyvale who band together and are a wonderful group. 1 out of every 3 people at ProMatch that lands, 1 out of every 3 is going back to work in some sort of contractor status, right? So I think that's something that we talked about a little earlier. So I think that's fascinating how that world is changing.
And Anna, she wanted the name of SHRM.
Yes, Society of Human Resource Management, SHRM.org. That is the global company.
So Corey, your thoughts about consulting, where it's going?
Yeah, I agree with Christine, and this is probably a little more anecdotally, but there are a lot of companies, more and more, that it is in their strategic plan that they have either entire groups or entire positions that are contractors or consultants. That's their business model, and I see that more and more. I have lots of clients that it's a way to dial up and dial down your OpEx. It's a way to manage your finances. And so if you're comfortable with that approach, it's a great way to go. And so I think it's here to stay. The concept that everyone is going to be a full-time employee and you're going to have 100% of your workforce in that field, that's not going to happen anymore.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And how about you finally, Diane?
I totally concur with Christine and Corey. Companies need people in specific roles. They bring them on, they move things around. They've got new product introductions, new focus. Things move quickly. And by having a certain number of consultants or contractors, it allows them to respond quicker, to be more nimble. And that's what companies are looking to do.
Well, I want to thank the panel, Corey, Diane, and Christine, for bringing up a lot of your anecdotal as well as your working experience. And we've raised lots of questions, lots of things to think about. And thank you all for participating. We have lots of programs for phase 2. And on behalf of phase 2 careers, thanks again, Diane, Corey, and Christine, for being part of a very dynamic panel. Thanks again, and take care, everyone.
A lot of fun. Thank you, Ron, and thank
Yeah.
you, Corey and Diane.
All right, take care.
Thank
Pleasure
you.
to be
Thanks,
on.
everyone.
Thank you.